Hey, welcome. Uh, I think it might be fun to let the audience know a little bit about the fact that we're straddling so many time zones here. That's kind of cool. So yeah, so just say your name, your film, and where it is you're joining us from and what time it is. Let's start with Christine.
Good morning. I'm Christine Turner, and I directed the film Betty Saar, Taking Care of Business. It is 10 o'clock here in New York.
Welcome, Christine.
Thanks.
Marsha and Lewis.
Good morning. I'm Marsha Gordon.
I'm Louis Cherry.
And we directed All the Possibilities, and we are 10 a.m., but from Raleigh, North Carolina.
Welcome. David.
Hi, my name is David Gross. I'm the director of Her New York, and I am currently here at 10:02 now in New York.
Welcome. We've got Eastern time zone represented strong. Olivia?
Hi, I'm Olivia Wang. I directed Unsung Heroes of Ink, and I'm joining from Hong Kong, and it's now 10 in the evening on Sunday.
Thank you for joining us, Olivia. Lorena.
Hi, everyone. I'm Lorena Alvarado. I'm calling from Brooklyn, and yeah, it's 10:10 here.
And your film?
Oh, and my film is The Incredulity of Jacoby Satterwhite.
Brilliant. And we'll wrap it up with Shannon.
Hi, everyone. I'm Shannon St. Aubin. I am the co-director with Nico Opper of When I Write It.
And you're joining us from where?
Thank you. It's 7 a.m. here, so I'm joining you from Oakland, California.
Yay, Oakland. Wow. So we've got 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. Super, super excited to have this eclectic group of films and filmmakers. Thank y'all so much for getting up or staying up to join us. So let's dive right in. So this program, I should say, is one of the perennials that I think we've had both an art program and we've definitely had a New York program all 5 years that I've been at Doc NYC doing the shorts programming. And it really speaks to, I think, the creative force that's just sort of woven into all that makes New York, New York. These stories are, of course, coming from different corners of the globe with this year's program. But they really, I think, the audience's appetite for the types of topics and subjects that you guys are all covering is something that we see every year. So it's really great to have you all. So I'm going to start with films that I thought had a really great, interesting treatment of subject, and that would be David's film, Her New York, and Christine's film, Betty Saar, as well as Nico and Shannon's film, When I Write It. You guys all had artists' subjects at the center of your films. Can you please share a little bit about your film and talk about why you wanted to feature the individuals that you featured? Let's start with Christine.
Sure. My film, Betty Saar, Taking Care of Business, is, as you saw, a film about the artist Betty Saar, who's primarily an assemblage artist. She also works in sculpture and a number of other mediums. I was actually invited by the Los Angeles County Museum of Art to make this film. And immediately I knew that I wanted to make it. I had seen Betty's work probably just a few months before at the New York Historical Society. What I didn't know was that she was going to have 2 major exhibitions coming up, which is quite incredible for a woman of 93 years old. So I was super enthusiastic about this film. I knew about her work. I was excited to sort of dive in. And one of the sort of challenges that I knew was that she has this decades-long, 7 decades worth of work. And how do you tell that story in a fairly short amount of time? But I had a lot of fun just digging in. Because she was 93 years old, I didn't have a ton of time with her. I think she's 94 now. She still has an incredible amount of energy, but I knew that I would not be able to spend huge amounts of time with her. And so we primarily centered it around an interview, and with just a little bit of verite. And then I spent a lot of time culling the archives and really going through a massive amount of work to sort of distill her career into what ultimately becomes 8 minutes, you know. And I think there's probably room for a much longer film, of course. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. And she's a riot, and she's a fierce woman. And I found that for me in the process too, it was just sort of inspiring to, I think, see someone who continued to persist and make work in the face of great challenges and difficulties as a woman and a Black woman and a mother of 3. And so I found it also her story to be personally inspiring.
Wonderful. Let me go to you, Shannon. We follow 2 of Oakland's really brilliant stars around for the day. And when I write it, talk about deciding to kind of have the story unfold around their experience, as well as it being like a love letter to Oakland.
So we approach this process really with the kids at the center, but this is very much for us a hybrid narrative doc. So we came at it with this idea around wanting to talk about how the social justice was affecting these 2 kids. And we had this, you know, really lofty idea for a short. And then the doc sort of creeps in and sort of just tells you that that's not what the story is. And so, you know, always at the center were these 2 kids who are very much entrenched in their art. Ajay does music, but right now he's actually in New York at Parsons doing fashion. Yeah, so he's kind of a rising star in that world as well. And then Layla publishes her first novel. I don't remember which publishing house, but it's pretty intense in 2022. So both of these kids are both extraordinary and ordinary. I talk a lot about this idea of Black exceptionalism while Nico and I were making it, and that these kids are both extraordinary, but they might be the rule rather than the exception if Black kids sort of have the same opportunities that white and non-Black children have. And so just spending time with them at the center while they create, but also are very much teenagers, also very much grappling with these ideas of love and, you know, what it means to, you know, come out to your parents and things like that. So I feel like they allowed their art to sort of help us tell the story, but also just showed their humanity through their work. So that was really kind of, we were led by them more than anything else, I think.
It's a great effect. And David?
Yeah, the process for this film kind of, it started in a pretty organic way. Jill happens to be a friend of my mother-in-law's, and shortly after my wife and I had been engaged, we were invited over to Jill's house for tea. And personally, I'm really attracted to you know, the sort of creative force that kind of I believe exists in every artist, and it manifests itself in many different ways. But immediately when I walked into Jill's apartment, you know, it was sort of like going back in time because she had literally pieces of New York City kind of around her house, from terracotta bricks, you know, to like an old store sign, sort of stained glass window. And then she's a collector. And so, you know, it's like, it was just kind of like going back in time. And what began to emerge, I mean, I sat down with Jill and knew I kind of wanted to do a portrait piece with her, but and you know, part of the process was just making sure that she was open to it. And you know, I did get a chance to sit with her for some time and kind of watch that process, you know, she'd opened up a little bit more. But you know, the thing was the woman who had you know, witnessed time in New York City and just and could pass on, you know, what that experience was like in a very creative way. So yeah, it was a pretty organic process.
Wonderful. And then Lorena, of course, the Incredulity has an amazing artist, Jacob, at its center. But I wanted to separate your film from the profile films because the artistic grammar that one experiences as an audience member of this film is, I think, its own sort of entity alongside what you share with us about Jacob, like getting to kind of step into his art in the way that you presented. I thought was quite beautifully done. Can you talk with us about your creative choice in crafting the film to really sort of weave in moments of experiencing his art?
Thank you. That's a great question. His work is so, Jacoby's work is so broad and all-encompassing, and he integrates practices of 3D animation and drawing and voguing and filming himself. And he also uses a lot of his personal histories within the storytelling of his work. And so there's just a lot of material to work with and think about when you approach his work. So that was the big challenge of starting this film. There was just such, like, I could make a feature film about his work. So the challenge was filtering it down to a short film. But then that also kind of became the, I guess, the way we told the story, like entering from one medium to another and it feeling a bit overwhelming at times, but that was very purposeful because his work is overwhelming and it's very surreal and very all-encompassing. So the film was kind of, the way we approached the film was trying to intertwine all of these disparate elements to create a cohesive wholeness. And yeah, that's why it feels like you enter into his world and this video game aesthetic and then photographs and then drawings, and then there's a lot of mixed media presented in the film. And yeah, it was just trying to mirror his own work.
Yeah, it was quite a ride. And then Olivia and Marsha and Lewis, I loved the it was also an immersion of a different kind. Olivia, you know, we get to kind of step into the studio and see the process of, you know, making the paper and treating it and hearing the history as it goes along. And then Marsha and Lewis, you know, I loved kind of being in the little moments of each of these different iterations of the larger work, which is of course very difficult to even conceive of in scale. Speak to us a bit about your creative process, and we'll start with Olivia.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, you know, having worked in the art industry for over a decade now, and having, you know, researched Chinese art very closely, what I realized is, you know, what we see in a museum, you know, like hanging, say, at the Met in New York, a beautiful Chinese ink painting. Really, the journey begins long before, you know, what we see, you know, hanging in a museum. And what I learned is that, you know, these materials that artists use, you know, the papers they use have, you know, such a rich history in themselves. For me, I wanted to go and see where they were made. I know, you know, China, paper was very famously invented in China like 2,000 years ago. And this is something we always hear about, but, you know, as collectors and audiences don't really understand or may not be familiar with how that process begins. So yeah, that was kind of how it started. And as a freelance writer of Chinese art, I could have written a research article about it. But I really felt strongly that film was the only way to show it and to bring it all to life, and to show the artists painting and sort of behind the scenes view. So I'm a first-time filmmaker, and yeah, obviously many challenges involved, but yeah, I wanted to shine a light on this overlooked role of paper in ink painting, and hopefully give viewers sort of like a deeper appreciation, like I myself had when I was kind of discovering, the rich kind of heritage and the craft behind an ink painting.
Yeah, you did for this viewer, for sure. Let's go to Marsha and Lewis, please.
So our piece, All the Possibilities, is really about a painting, and it's a very, very large painting. It would be 30 by 40 feet if it were all, assembled in one plane. And the artist Vernon Pratt is not well known at all. He worked in New York and in Durham, North Carolina, where he was a professor at Duke, an art professor for decades. And he was very much in the conversation with Warhol and Sol LeWitt and others. But this piece has never been exhibited before, and he
never even saw it fully
Yeah.
assembled in his lifetime because it was so large.
Really?
So yeah, he just would paint these panels and box them up, and anyway, so it was exhibited, and we really tried to bring the viewer into the painting and into somehow a way to experience a painting that's difficult to understand and difficult to even see.
And because Vernon worked in the mode of systematic abstraction, and he had systems for all of his paintings, literal formulas that he would adhere to, it was also important to us that the film respect that. So we developed a kind of formula. So the film is 16 minutes and 16 seconds. The film, the painting is called All the Possibilities and Filling in 16ths. And each of the 4 chapters had rules about what scale we would show. And we don't show the painting, in its entirety until the end, and then when it's coming down off the walls. And so we tried to approach it in the spirit of the artist so that it had a kind of form mirroring the content as well.
That's brilliant. Oh my goodness, I feel like I just got an Easter egg. No, the film definitely has a rigor to it, but I did not decode that in it, so that's quite brilliant. And then, how did you come by this art and this project to be telling this story?
Well, I knew Vernon when I was a student at Duke somewhat, and then he died in an accident, and his work was really not. It was just kind of sitting in a warehouse, and the museum at NC State mounted an exhibit of his work.
So, and that's where I'm a professor of film history at North Carolina State University. And so that it came on our radar that way. And I mean, I have to say, it was such an interesting challenge, just an intellectual challenge of how do you represent in film and in a documentary a painting of this scale by an artist that very few people know about. And we didn't want to just do a bio. We wanted it to have the kind of complexity that we saw in the work. And we hope this painting, by the way, is sitting in boxes in a warehouse. It has no home. So one of our hopes is that more people will see this and go, this painting deserves to be in the best modern art collection in the country, because there's nothing else like it, really. And it has a place, I think, a really important place in contemporary art history that's just been lost because he was not as visible as he might have been had he kept to New York instead of moving to Durham.
Wow. All right, art dealers.
Right.
Stock NYC shorts, it's where you need to be. I don't think that I heard from you, Olivia, or Lorena about how you guys came by your subject. Can you share with us how you found out about Lorena Jacoby, Olivia, these amazing ink artists?
I can go first. So this project was made for Art21, which is a nonprofit based in New York that showcases and promotes contemporary artists. And they have a specific series that's called New York Close-Up, which provides intimate glimpses into artists' works and their process. And so Nick, which is the director of video programming, approached me to see if I would be interested in doing a film about Jacoby. And I was thrilled because I was a fan of his work, and his work is just so exciting and weird and unique and thought-provoking. And then this just kind of started a, like a 4 to 6 month process of entering the rabbit hole of making the film.
Brilliant. And Olivia?
Yeah, for myself, I've been researching Chinese painting for some time now, and Liu Dan is actually one of my favorite artists. It was seeing his paintings that I wound up doing my master's dissertation, focused on him. So just, a couple of years ago, talking to him about, the papers he uses, that's how this project actually initially started. From him, I met the second artist, Xiao Fan, and we kind of just started the journey from there.
Brilliant. I will be getting, I know, the 5-minute warning from Allison soon. So I would really love, I've been trying to bring the audience into this in some way, since we're having to do this without audience. But I'd love to hear from each of you what you hope audiences will take away from your film, from having seen your film, from having learned the subject that you're exploring, or gotten to interact with the characters that you're profiling. Let's start with David.
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I mean, I just hope that they walk away. Jill looked at New York in a different way. Her attention to detail, was incredible. I hope that the audience really gets a sense of just the experience of every moment that you get to spend in that city, because of the way things change so quickly, and that sort of force is such a juggernaut that it's like every moment is precious. And the buildings and the structures that become the fabric of your daily life, that make such an impression, they may not be there tomorrow, and that is a part of being a New Yorker. And and I guess the other thing that I really would want is that, especially in the times that we're in right now, there's something very refreshing to remember that things change. And in our city right now, it's like, I think it's really important to know that, like, we're where we're at, and we can handle this kind of moment. And but it's like these things will change. And so yeah, it's just the sort of love of New York is what I hope the audience walks away with ultimately.
Thank you. Let's go to Shannon.
I really want not only for people to love Oakland like I do, to take a look at what it means to exist in a space that is changing through no, influence of your own, for marginalized people, especially young people, and the way that they look at it. So everyone, it's happening in every city in this country for sure, in every major city. So what does it mean when when displacement and gentrification happens? And also really just to be engaged in the things that both those people are engaged in, very much making art, making music. There's that in everyone to some degree. And what it means to sort of tell your story through whatever medium how you might look at the world, and then use it to inform what you put out. So I think that for me, other than just sort of falling in love with Layla and Ajay, who I just wish I given birth to. I love them so much. Yeah, Nico and I always joke that like these are the kids we raised but didn't raise.
Right.
In 17 days of shooting, it feels like they're your own. And so, yeah, I really think that for us, it's really about love the city you're in, look for the people who might be being pushed aside, you know, because they might have huge things to say. Also, examine the things that they're examining. Examine, you know, youth justice. Examine your own vulnerability in your own life. So I think, you know, it's sort of very much, you know, the youth shall lead us. So that's kind of where I land on it.
Thank you, Shannon. Let's go to Christine.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a few different things I hope people take away. I always, you know, hope that I think about what it is that I kind of take away from the film and what in the process of making it. And then I just hope that audiences can feel that as well. So sort of what I alluded to earlier is that I just find her to be a very inspiring person. And, you know, I think about one of the pieces that she made that's in the film, The Liberation of Aunt Jemima. And that piece was very much responding to a moment in time. And for her, it was King's assassination in '68. And that feeling of wanting to say something, but also her not able to be out in the street and protesting because of her very young children. And I think she was able to find a way to use art as a form of activism. And I think particularly in this moment, I hope that people watch the film and feel inspired by that and figure out how they can contribute in whatever way makes sense for them to this moment. And also just that she's been continued to make work over such a long period of time and incredibly prolific and most of the time doing it sort of with very little recognition. You probably can hear my 10-month-old in the other room right now. But yeah, hopefully I hope people will take that away from the film.
Thank you. Kisses to him. Olivia, let's go to you.
Yeah, I mean, the same for me. I mean, I do hope that the film can encourage audiences, you know, to get more interested in Chinese art and to have a deeper appreciation for ink painting. I really found by visiting and getting to know the craftspeople in this very remote part of China, it was so inspiring to see their dedication and commitment to continuing their work. I think especially now what we associate with contemporary China or even Beijing, like very shiny cities, which are very developed, and you know, these artists are doing so well in their careers, they're selling for, you know, thousands to millions. You know, what we see, this different aspect of, you know, very rural China and craftspeople carrying out these traditions that have been, you know, followed for, you know, hundreds and hundreds of years. Yeah, I'd like to bring more recognition to those craftspeople, and yeah, that's what I hope audiences can come away with.
Wonderful. Lorena, and then we'll wrap up with Marsha and Lewis.
For me with this film, I was hoping to showcase a more deep and complex study or approach to Jacoby's work, because a lot of times his work has been oversimplified or a bit misrepresented in the media, using certain buzzwords or focusing on subject matters that might be more marketable. And so with this film, it was purposefully trying to get away from those subject matters and try to focus more on his work and how complex it is.
Brilliant, thank you.
I think we were really, the takeaway really is to have an experience. It's very, I think, trying to create an experience of a painting that's very difficult, and it's complex and it's majestic. And so we really are just trying to bring people into that and be able to see that and have an experience.
And yet I would say I want people to feel like after they've watched this, that they've seen the painting and actually haven't experienced it, because I think to experience it is to be in its presence, because what you can't quite convey is the meditative quality of being in this installation. It was on 3 walls, but it should ideally be exhibited on 1 wall. There's just very few walls that are that big. That experience of being kind of enveloped by something on this scale that was put together to have this experience of black and white. And so, yeah, so I hope it's also a little bit enticing. Like, I wish I could see this in person.
Yeah, we need to get the Park Avenue Armory to see this film. They have one of those massive spaces, and they can make a wall of whatever size they want.
Hey, I'm happy.
All right, you guys, thank you all so much for joining us, for, as I said, getting up early, staying up late. It's such a pleasure to have all of you here with us, to have your brilliant work in the festival. Thank you for your brilliant work. And yeah, I will hopefully see you in the flesh soon. But for now, thank you. Thank you, audience, for joining us and for enjoying these wonderful films. Everybody, let's say goodbye.
Bye.
Thank you.